Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, I'm back from vacation, and we have a lot to talk about with the state of this Mets team, including your mailbag questions. Later on, top prospect Kevin Parada joins the show to talk about his season in Brooklyn. So subscribe to the Mets Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Elevate your style in a Cadillac. Go from bold to bolder in an SUV, from inspiring to awe-inspiring in a sedan. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. And here's your reminder to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast. I am back from vacation. It was a good break, as always. I am your host, Connor Rogers, joined by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. Joe, I wish I got off the plane and a lot had changed in a positive way for the New York Mets. And of course, even with a 6-hour time difference and eventually a 5-hour time difference, I kept up with this team. But let's keep this simple, right? I'm not even going to ask you how you're doing. We're going to get right into the show today. Listen, we text enough. I know all is well. Everything's good on your end. But with this team right now, let's pretend that I didn't have any cell phone service at all or any Wi-Fi. I was completely out of touch for an entire week's span. What is the state of the New York Mets right now here in June?
Bad. The state is bad. Things are obviously not going well, especially on the pitching side. I tweeted this out on Wednesday night after the Mets lost to the Astros to lose the series. The Mets have lost 5 of the last 6 games where they have scored 7 or more runs. That feels almost impossible to do. Like, you should win 99% of the games where you score 7+, and the Mets have lost 5 of their last 6. The offense is starting to turn it around a bit, cited by those stats there. The pitching's falling apart. The starting pitching, Max Scherzer gave a good start in game 1 against Houston that they really needed, but I have no faith that the next time out we're going to get the same type of thing from Max. Justin Verlander, been up and down. Tyler McGill, they need Jose Quintana back, or they need to call up Joey Lucchesi. They cannot keep trotting Tyler McGill out.
I would say David Peterson right now.
David Peterson hasn't even been that great in AAA Syracuse, yeah. So I would really lean Lucchesi if you want, like, right now, and Quintana is progressing in his rehab, pitching minor league games. I expect to see him, but maybe before the All-Star break even. So you might only need a start or 2 from someone like Lucchesi, but the starting pitching and the bullpen, they're costing this team games.
There's no way around it. That's exactly what it is. They have been scoring runs. Big picture here for the month, and we always talk about how brutal June can be for the Mets, and this schedule was tough going into the month. Since June 1st, when they beat the Phillies, right, and they closed out that sweep, swept by the Blue Jays, swept by the Braves, you dropped 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, you split with the Yankees, you dropped 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals, which is wildly disappointing, and you dropped 2 out of 3 to the Astros. You can't live that way, right? You can't. You're not winning series. You're not getting any sweeps. You're struggling to be competitive right now. And like you said, Joe, you look at the scores in games they lose. Losing 10-8. Even go back to the last game of the Cardinals series, losing 8-7. It's just, even the first game against the Yankees, you feel like they should have won both games against the Yankees when they lost 7-6 in that first game. I look at the Mets like this, right? And to walk people through my vacation, most of the time I would be going to bed. 1:10 a.m. is when first pitch would be happening. So, and the Mets had a couple of days off. I actually got lucky with the timing of this trip, or unlucky, because, right, a lot of people aren't enjoying watching them play right now, but we always will watch the Mets. You wake up, you could scroll SNY's Twitter feed, and God, you can't get a better recap in the world of what's going on in Mets land, whether it's every single highlight, stat, who's hot and who's not. The Mets right now, to me, as I see Daniel Vogelbach come back from his mental break and absolutely rake, are a ship, and not a very pretty one, that they plug one, everybody runs to one side of the ship to plug one leak, and 3 more open on the other side. That's what the Mets feel like right now. Whether it's when Pete was hurt, and it's amazing Pete's already back. When Pete was hurt, it felt like Tommy Pham, sizzling hot, or Lindor after the birth of his second daughter. Sizzling hot. Plug the leaks. You can't get a solid start. You can't have the bullpen work through anything, or somebody goes into a rut, right? I mean, even Brandon Nimmo in this latest series. Nimmo, obviously, we feel like it's the mental mistakes we've seen from Nimmo now, but also even at the plate with Nimmo recently in this series. McNeil right now is in a funk that's maybe as bad as we've seen when healthy, and hopefully McNeil is healthy. That's the state of the Mets right now, is that they're not in sync. There are so many issues. Every time they take one step forward, they take 3 or 4 back, not 1 or 2 back right now. And you look at a lot, yes, they swept the Phillies a couple weeks ago, and they start a series with Philadelphia. Right now, the Phillies are one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. Everybody's kind of sitting there saying, oh, the Marlins won't keep this up. Are we sure about that? The Reds right now, the Diamondbacks, young teams in baseball that are on the rise. The National League got even more terrifying quicker. And the Mets right now are all the way down in the basement looking up everybody with not an elevator to take, not a staircase to climb, but just a giant Mount Everest in front of them. And I know we say this a lot, or you don't want to always react this way, especially before the break. But when you look at how quickly the deadline approaches with the Mets right now, these guys got to look in the mirror and figure it out amongst themselves and be the players that they've been throughout their career, or they're not going anywhere. And then the tougher questions start, right? They really do. The tougher questions start of, do you move David Robertson at the deadline to get some kind of piece back because you don't believe this team can compete in the second half? Is the message stale under Buck Showalter right now? Seriously, is it stale right now? Because it's one thing for guys not to perform, right? You go through slumps or you're having a down year at the plate or whatever it may be. Joe, from what I got to see while I was gone and what I've seen most of this year, this team is terrible in the field. It's mental mistakes. They're not prepared in any kind of situation. They're not prepared for the new rules. I feel like the Mets make tons of mistakes with pitch clock violations, getting ready in the plate, and both on the mound, catching. It's jarring how top to bottom so many things are wrong, even beyond the players on the team right now.
It really seemed last year the Mets were so beyond prepared, like more prepared than every team. Buck found every loophole and everything seemingly went the Mets' way. Now, like you said, Connor, and I was going to talk about the mental mistakes, like those are the killer ones. I mean, Omar Narvaez starts the last game against the Astros. He gets a pitch clock violation, a catcher's interference, 2 pass balls, Pete Alonso running like 5 feet away from the baseline. That's what's more maddening to me is play fundamental baseball. That should be the baseline for a professional, to play fundamentally sound. And then obviously, you're going to go through hot stretches, cold stretches, like you mentioned. Lindor and Vogelback and Tommy Pham are good pieces for what the Mets are doing right now. But the mental stuff, and it's going into the field, and you could just feel how much they're pressing, because they're aware of how they're playing and they have higher expectations for themselves, but they're pressing at the plate. The starting pitchers are pressing because they feel they have to get deep because of how the bullpen's pitching, and the bullpen's overworked, and there's really not anywhere for them to turn to kind of help that. So right now, it definitely feels like a spiraling ship that is trending in the absolute wrong direction. And I am generally glass half full. And I do think there's obviously plenty of talent on this team. Let's not be completely naive, but it's about to turn July. Like, it's no longer early. It's no longer, they'll just easily figure it out. And maybe they do. Maybe the Philly series, they have another good series against Philly, and that starts a trend, and we are having a different conversation a couple of weeks from now. But they're getting to a position where it's going to be a complicated July into August as far as player personnel decisions. You mentioned, do you sell a David Robertson if things don't turn around? He feels like kind of, honestly, the only real trade chip that they have. Like, maybe you could get a little something for Tommy Pham. But a lot of these guys on the team have no trade clauses, have big salaries, have contracts beyond this year that other teams don't want to take on. A lot of trade deadline movement is based on rental players, and the Mets don't have a ton of rental players available. I mean, Like, we're talking about not wanting to play Mark Canha and not wanting to play Eduardo Escobar, yet you expect some other team in baseball to give you something for
A
them?
better team.
Like, yeah, like, it doesn't seem to make much sense. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And unless things take a dramatic turn and take a dramatic turn very quickly, I do not want to see the Mets buying anything next month. I want them to stand pat. Go ahead and just deal with the fact that this is not your year and take it from there. But they're just spiraling in a way that I could not have possibly foreseen.
It's true. And you're right what you said at the beginning. A lot of it is the pitching right now. And the pitching is one of those things where it's either going to figure itself out or it's a lost season, right? You could sit there and go, okay, McGill's been bad, and that's supposed to be Quintana's spot. That's fair. I really do think that's fair. Senga, a little bit of a roller coaster this year, but overall,
lowest ERA on the team by a wide margin.
Right. Senga, who was signed to really be a number 3 or a number 4, has been far away from my actual concern point. The concern point always comes, and listen, even if McGill's been awful all year, if Verlander and Scherzer are pitching like Verlander and Scherzer, is this team in the basement like they are right now? They'd be hovering. They'd be like, okay, we're waiting for Quintana to get back, and we're going to really press and push for the wild card, and everything's going to be fine. Max is just puzzling to figure out right now, honestly. The start against the Yankees, obviously, where you give up 6 in less than 4 innings. And then the good news is 8 innings of 1-run ball against the Astros, Joe. I want to frame it like this we'll go Scherzer first and then Verlander, and we have a lot of mailbag to get through, so we'll jump right into that. But are there signs that they can dial it in and start to put together those 4 good starts out of every 5? Or is this just the Verlander and Scherzer experience at their age where it's going to be too bad, too good, 1 so-so, 1 really bad, 1 really good? Because that's not ace pitching. And these 2 guys are not only paid to be aces, they are expected to be aces. And when there's expectations from a team going into the season and you don't come even close to meeting them, it really sets everything back. And I know it's tough to talk like this right now after what Scherzer did in Houston, but I'm not going to be a sucker, Joe. I'm not declaring everything okay until I see 3 more of these or 4 in a row kind of situation. And we have not gotten that this year from either of these guys.
I am oddly less confident in Scherzer than I am Verlander. And for me, I don't know what Max Scherzer is showing up each day. And that's not just like, look at the stat line when he's done pitching. I don't know if Max Scherzer is going to be throwing 92 miles an hour or 95 miles an hour. I don't know if his slider is going to be crisp and have guys chasing, or if it's going to be hanging over the middle of the plate. Scherzer is just so unpredictable start to start from a stuff standpoint and a location standpoint that I have no idea what to expect the next time out. Maybe the Astros start was the start of something for him. But based on how things have gone this season for Scherzer, my expectation is the next time out, it won't be good. And, maybe I'm proven wrong. I hope I'm proven wrong because, frankly, that they need Max to be Max and the Max that they had last year and obviously the Max that he's been throughout his career. But I have no reason to have, honestly, any sense of optimism that Scherzer's going to be this at any level of consistency going forward. Whereas on the Verlander side, his is mostly command and control coming and going. And I think that's something he can hammer out. He's obviously had great control throughout his career. That's not certainly walks haven't been a major problem for Justin Verlander historically. And they're not even like a massive problem here, but he's not throwing strikes the way he should. But the stuff is there every time out. You're seeing the 95s, you're seeing the 96s. The breaking ball looks pretty crisp. So, like, honestly, when you look at the stats and Verlander's ERA is higher than Max's, I'm honestly surprised by that being the fact that at this stage, given like what I visually see. But right now, it's 2 guys that are pitching not even like number 3 starters at this point. They're pitching like number 4 starters, and they're getting, I said this a couple of weeks ago talking about Lindor, who's obviously turned it on. Like, I'm a little less concerned about people's paychecks like that, but the expectations come with it. So you get paid this much. The expectation is you're an ace. Verlander won the Cy Young last year. They're not hyping up a Cy Young Award winner from 2014 and saying like, oh, Mets signed former Cy Young. Like, he just won the Cy Young. and they're pitching like back end starters, and the Mets need them to pitch like aces, like Verlander did in the Yankee game, like Max did in the Astro game. Like they need that on a consistent level if there's any hope at all of this season turning itself around.
There's no doubt about that, and it's a reoccurring topic on the show. I mean, how long can you really go on it? Is you need these guys to play to the back of their baseball cards, as you always say, Joe, or come close to it, and then you got a shot. And until they do that for an extended period of time, it doesn't matter because the Mets are doing their part in terms of hitting, and those guys got to give them their big starts. And that the emphasis of that is so magnified when you have a massive, massive hole in the back of the rotation. So let's get into the mailbag today because this is one of those classic Mets fans, understandably venting kind of situation and show right now. And we got a lot of good questions. This one from Castel Ortiz, who asked us, Cohen's business approach thrives on critical thinking. He can't be satisfied with the team building of Epler, nor the way Buck deploys the younger players. Both Stearns and Counsell are available after the season. Does he seize that opportunity?
I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself with the whole David Stearns thing. I know that I think Bob Nightingale had reported that there was some expectation that would occur. And I think John Heyman even got some quotes on Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen hasn't ever spoken to David Stearns before. So I would say it's a little presumptuous to assume that he's just going to hire him. What if they meet and they don't connect? But look, at the end of this year, if things do not turn around and the Mets miss the playoffs as they're obviously projected to do right now, there's going to be change. That's the way it works. I mean, Steve Cohen did not invest as much money as he did in this team to miss the playoffs and play so much mistake baseball. Like just everything is not clicking. Like if they made the playoffs and lost in the NLDS or something, he may not make any changes. But the way this team is shaping up, it's tough to envision the Billy Epler being the top baseball decision maker and Buck Showalter managing this team. Like, I don't know how else to say it. And is that David Stearns? Is that Craig Counsell? Who knows? Is it Carlos Beltran? Is it Eric Chavez this time? Like, are there people with other teams? I mean, but for me, that's like, let's just see how this next like month and change goes. And if the Mets can turn it around, the conversation shifts. But I think if it doesn't, Billy Epler may not get fired too. Because one thing that's been noted is that he does have a good long-standing relationship with the hypothetical David Stearns. So if they hire David Stearns
and
David
Shohei
Stearns
Ohtani
and his Japanese experience for sure. So Ohtani is a factor, but the Mets have wanted, since Steve Cohen came on board, to have that president of baseball operations, GM, two-person show. And they haven't been able to do that. So, maybe it's a possibility that Epler would just become the number 2 baseball decision maker, keep his title, and, maybe someone like David Stearns could get hired over his head as the true top baseball decision maker.
And I think on the Buck side of things that Castel asked about, when Buck was hired here, it always felt like, and maybe he didn't view it this way, but it always felt like a bit of a bridge or a Band-Aid, or I think bridge is more fair. Band-Aid is kind of like, we just got to get through this. Bridges, we need stability right now, and we need experience until our next guy is ready to take the reins. And that's, if everything goes great, I always thought that was like a 3-year window. If everything went great, things went phenomenal the first year. They've been abysmal this year. It's kind of easy to turn that page and start to get a little younger and start to get a little a fresh breath of air, right? I mean, really, like the Mets are sleepwalking. Even all their problems, right? They're not playing well. It's easy to say all these things when someone's not playing well, but the Mets are not a high energy team as well. You watch other teams around baseball, right, that are not great, but it's easily better than the Mets, but not even the great teams, but there's something different about them. The Pirates come to mind. The Pirates are not a great team right now. Pirates play with a lot of energy. They really, really do. The Reds right now, everything, they're, the talk of baseball right now. Mets fans are going to see the Diamondbacks pretty shortly right now. And the Diamondbacks have had a lot of young talent that's been ready to explode for a while. So I think the baseball diehards aren't shocked that they're turning it around. I think everybody's shocked it's this good. They're amazing right now. But there's an energy element with the Mets right now. And whether you agree or not that Buck Showalter deserves some of the blame of that, he's somebody that can be replaced, right? The 10-year deals, the 5-year deals, even the 2-year deals worth $90 million, not very easy to figure out how to maneuver around those. The manager, that's something where you can make a move. So even if it's 3% of the blame, 8% of the blame, it's the most movable part in all of this, Joe.
It is, and it's reminiscent. Like the way you describe the process of hiring Buck is reminiscent of the free agent approach that they've taken with the pitchers. Like they've been looking for bridges until they could get the young guys, the Mike Vassals, Christian Scott, who's emerged in a big way, Blade Tidwell, pitchers like that. Like get them towards the big leagues and be able to take over for these, veteran pitchers. And a lot of the teams you said that are playing with that energy. One of the consistent trends. Young players and young pieces tend to bring a little more energy, like have the Mets become maybe a little too veteran. Like you always want to mesh. You don't want to be an entirely young team. You don't want to be an entirely old team, but have the Mets maybe teeter just a little too much towards the veterans and a little away from the youth, as Mark Vientos is hitting balls off the wall in AAA on Wednesday night instead of playing at all for the Mets.
Our next one is from Objective Mets fan who asked, do you and Connor watch every game beginning to end? Bedtime is a valid excuse for you, Joe. These games and this team are getting harder to watch. As we slip deeper into the standings, does your commitment waver?
So I love that I have the long con of just being able to use sleep as my excuse. I've been planning that for years in the works, and now I've got people to buy in. I would say if I'm home, I'm watching most, if not all of every game, but it also depends what else is on. Like the Mets are off here on Thursday, so that works out. But if the Mets were on at 7 tonight, I'd be watching the College World Series, LSU versus Wake Forest semifinal. Winner goes to the final against Florida with 2 pitchers starting that are going to go in the top 10 of next month's MLB draft. Almost unheard of to see that kind of matchup. So I'd probably be watching that. But I'm always paying mind at minimum to what they're doing, and I watch most, if not all, the games when I'm home.
I do too. I mean, I've watched through some really rough seasons. The thing is,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We quickly forget how bad the Mets have been for the majority of our lives as 30 somethings. Like they've been bad most of the time. So I've sat through way worse than this.
And that's when we weren't podcasting about it.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a show about it, your job is to talk about, you don't just sign up because things are good, right? That's not how it goes. So for me, also baseball, it's easy. Baseball is the perfect sport for me to always watch because I could sit there and for my football job, watch tape, do a lot of other things while it's always on. It's a very easy sport to always have on. So I watch, even if this team, if it gets to the point where they are sellers at the deadline, like I'll still watch the second half. You watch the younger players. I understand for people, though. I understand why the ballpark is less filled when the team is out of it, or people just, they'll go out to dinner. They don't care that the Mets are playing the Phillies or the Braves or whoever at that night. I get it for people. I think for us, it's multi-layered where you and I are both sickos and we watch no matter what, even before we did the podcast. And now we do the podcast. We text about the team. We keep an eye on the young talent on the team, and young talent might get to play a lot more if the team starts to go down in the dumps even further as well. So it's a really, really good question that I understand why it varies for everybody. The next question here is from Jonathan, who asked, the Mets have lost game after game in the 3rd or 4th or 5th inning, never getting the chance to have the high leverage guys pitch. Is it time to buck conventional wisdom and use your best relief pitchers early and worry about holding to save the game later?
It's
almost a catch-22, right?
Yeah, like, all right, you could use David Robertson in the 4th inning when Tyler McGill can't make it through, and then you get to the 9th and you somehow have a lead. You're putting Dominic Leone to close the game, or our guy Grant Hartwig, who I'm super excited for him, by the way, making his major league debut. One heck of a story. I mean, 2 years ago, undrafted, was basically, I mean, you've heard Gary Cohen talk about it on the broadcast, but he was done with baseball. He was getting ready to go to medical school, everything. He had a kind of middling career at Miami of Ohio, took a shot with the Mets, led the organization in ERA in 2022, played at every single level of the minor leagues, and now made his big league debut in Houston. So excited for a guy like Hartwig. But I mean, I get what you're trying to say, because I believe David Robertson, as of this recording, has thrown 8 pitches since June 14th, and that's almost 10 days ago now. So the Mets aren't giving him the opportunity to pitch. So you definitely want to get him work, but I don't know if the right solution, though I appreciate the outside the box thinking, because we need something to try to work here. But I don't know if throwing Robertson in the 4th or 5th and then hoping and praying one of the lower level relievers in the bullpen can close it out is necessarily the best solution.
Yeah, it really is damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for Buck. Now, what we always say is there are close games like 3-1, 2-1 in the 6th and 7th where Buck doesn't throw out his best relievers out there. Now it's time to operate with urgency. I mean, really, it's getting late early for the Mets, and that's something that's kind of driven us a little crazy throughout this tenure, and that's something that I think can change and will have to change. You'll have to throw Robertson a lot. Sometimes 2 innings would be good. Our last one here from Zero. How can MLB fix the blocking the plate rule? This has been a hot topic this week, Joe, with a lot of different controversy, not just this week. It's been a problem for a while. Is there anything in your eyes they can do, though, to fix what's going on here?
I'm just surprised the Mets haven't been called for a bunch or something based on everything else that's happened. But yeah, I mean, it's something that's obviously been going on, and very noticeably over the last few days, there's been two examples that honestly, I don't even know the clarity on the rule. It's like you have to leave a lane, but is that subjective? Because the big thing, and we've talked about this with the sticky stuff too, like it's become subjective. It needs to be clear cut. What is a lane? Because I don't know. I don't know if you do, Connor, but I have no idea what they consider a lane.
It's not consistent.
And
it's like pass interference, but worse.
Yeah, and you see, like if you have the ball, you could block, or you need to leave a lane before you catch the ball, and then how far up can you go? It's just so confusing, and like with some of the rules that MLB has put in place, a lot of them are kind of more confusing than understandable, and that's not what the game should be doing. Like, I'm down for rule changes. I'm down for changing the game. Like the Jeff McNeil, when they said he was too far on the shift, like I thought it was you could be there until they went to deliver a pitch. You had to be back, and it looked like he was just shading to like as a pickoff thing. Like, I don't know. A lot of the rules just don't make sense, and I don't know the fix to the blocking the plate rule because I don't entirely understand the blocking the plate rule.
That's always the issue. Nobody gets it. You can't see it. You can't practice for it. You can't brace for it. It varies game by game. And that's a massive issue in baseball. Like you said, Joe, it's the same process as the sticky stuff where there is no process. There's no clear and concise formula to it. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your shows. We're going to turn our eyes to the future now with a special edition of Down on the Farm as Mets prospect Kevin Parada, last year's first-round pick and current Brooklyn Cyclone, stops by the show. Kevin, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're good. We're excited to have you on. Obviously, last year's first-round pick of the Mets. Going back to last year's draft, what was the experience like being around All-Star Week and then, of course, being with your family when you hear your name called that early?
It was an awesome experience. Obviously, being around the All-Stars, you get after getting drafted, you got to see like Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Ohtani, you name it. They were all there. Pete Alonso. It was so surreal being around all those guys after getting drafted, and they're congratulating you, and you're like, you're a 10-time All-Star. Like, why are you me? But yeah, being with family is the most important thing, and getting to spend that special moment with them. You can't even really describe it. Honestly, I went blank for, I think, 30 seconds during actually hearing my name called. But yeah, having the people that have supported you your entire life, it's pretty awesome to be right there with them and continue my baseball career and journey.
Did you have any inkling that the Mets might be the team that ended up with you? Because, I do a lot of draft coverage here for SNY, and I did mock drafts and I read mock drafts, and I saw you as high as 3, 5, 6, that range. It surprised me personally that you were available at 11. And as a Mets fan, excited that it happened. But did you have any inkling that the Mets were one of the teams heavily in on you?
Honestly, I just knew that every team was interested, and I really didn't have. I'd seen the mock drafts and stuff too, but I really had no clue until not even the day of. Like, I didn't really hear much chatter about what's going on or who's thinking about picking me. So I kind of just got the phone call right when the Mets were picking, and I was like, it kind of just hit me.
As Joe hinted at, we keep an eye on the farm system pretty closely on this show, and we've seen you've had a really, really big June so far. It's been awesome to watch. What is the biggest adjustment, or what was the biggest adjustment going from college to pro ball?
It's just you play every day. It's the consistency, and I mean, obviously, guys are better. Like, you're using a wood bat, less mistakes can be made, and um, I I haven't played in weather as cold as New York before in my life, so that was also a bit of an adjustment, but it's still baseball and you get used to it. And yeah, I think I've adjusted quite well and just continuing to do my thing and let everything take care of itself.
In college, your setup at the plate was definitely one of the most unique ones I've seen. Best way to describe it, if the people listening haven't seen, it's like you're carrying like a laundry bag over your shoulder is probably the best way I could describe the way it looks. I've noticed in some videos, specifically this month, that it looks like that's been toned down a little bit. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that way. Is that something you are trying to do? And if so, why?
It's something that I've like kind of toyed with. It's just I have somewhat the same natural position. It's just trying to simplify things, make it easier, more consistent, especially when you're facing guys that throw 95 with good wipeout sliders and changeups. Like, you want to get yourself in the most consistent position as possible. So it's not something that I'm like actively trying to change, but I can tell that it's cleaned up and become a little more efficient just because of playing baseball at this level. It's more difficult when things are too complicated.
We know how big the pitcher-catcher relationship is in the game, and how's it been specifically catching two big-time arms in Blade Tidwell and Tyler Stuart so far?
It's been awesome working with those guys. I mean, they go out there every day and compete, and every time I look up after 5, 6, 7 innings, I'm like, 1 run, no runs. Like, it's pretty. It's a great position to have, especially as an offense and especially as being a catcher, knowing that it's like we're giving ourselves every chance to win when they go out there.
Have you spent much time in New York prior to this spring? I know you said that obviously this April weather was an adjustment for you, but in general, have you spent time in New York? And what's been your favorite part of living in the city so far?
Honestly, I go to the city all the time, like on my off days, and I like just walking around and seeing the architecture. It's just so beautiful, and I say every street looks so much the same, but so different at the same time. Um, it's a nice getaway because you can walk a couple miles and realize that you just spent 30 minutes, 45 minutes walking through this entire city of New York and not even feel it. Say back home, like if I'm walking in Pasadena, if I walk a mile, it's all just trees and homes. So you're like, man, this is a long walk. But in the city, you kind of just get lost in it. But yeah, I've been to New York a couple times, but haven't really spent much time outside of this month or few months since coming up for Brooklyn.
Have you locked down the pizza spot yet? Like, do you have your go-to pizza spot yet?
I've heard good things about L&B, so I tend to get stuff from there in Brooklyn. But inside the city, like if I'm in Manhattan, I'm walking around and it's kind of just whatever street corner I end up on, I'll just get the pizza from there because it's usually pretty good.
Yeah, usually can't go wrong. During spring training, did you get to spend any time with Francisco Alvarez? And is that somebody that you get to, trade notes with or just kind of banter with a little bit?
Yeah, I got to spend a lot of time with him, especially at big league camp, and yeah, we'd throw things off of each other and work together and have little competitions like everyone does. But we got to work a lot together and love working with him.
Going back to draft last year again, obviously what main scout report was Kevin Parada is going to hit and Kevin Parada is going to hit for power. The questions were on the defensive side of the ball. So where do you think you've made your most growth in your short time now in pro ball defensively? And what do you want to work on most going forward?
Yeah, I think my shortest or the most growth right now in the short time has been throwing right now. I feel so much more confident throwing to second base, throwing to third. As far as the receiving and the blocking and all of that stuff, I think it's just naturally gotten better just because of catching more, doing it more often. But I had the least confidence probably in my throwing when I first got to professional baseball, and I've noticed that's where I've had the most jumps consistently. And yeah, it's been the game calling, all that I think has come very naturally, and it's nice to continuously work on it. And good thing about pro ball is that if you have a bad day one day, like you're playing the next, so you don't really have time to dwell on it.
Last one here, Kevin. I think the coolest thing, if you're a baseball fan, that you could see this week is, and for people that don't know this, when you play in Brooklyn, sometimes the fireworks just go off from Coney Island during the game. And Joe at PSL The Flushing on Twitter, for those that want to look at this while listening, posted you hitting a game-tying triple in a Cyclones game as the fireworks are going off. It almost looks like the Sandlot or just something straight out of, like, what is that experience like when you're the guy doing it? I know you have to log in because we know how hard hitting is or how impossible it is, but you have the game tying triple, big moment, and the fireworks going off as you're running the bases. It's just insane to me.
Yeah, it's this was actually the first night it happened, was last night, and we're playing the Yankees too. So it's just like kind of everything about New York that you're thinking of. And yeah, I'm sitting in the dugout. All of a sudden, fireworks start going off an inning and a half before. And we're like, oh, this is going to happen for 10, 15 minutes. All of a sudden, we're 2 innings in, and I'm coming up to the plate, and they're still going off. And fouled a couple balls back, was trying to focus. But honestly, like, then the finale started coming up while I was hitting. And I could just, like, every fireworks fan shot off. And it kind of like just stepped out for the box for a second, took a deep breath, and it's almost just like more crowd noise. Like that's really what it is. Like some of the hitters were telling me like, man, it's so distracting. And I'm like, we have lights everywhere in Coney Island. Plus like, it's just loud. So it's almost like just a bunch of screaming fans. So, but definitely the Sandlot, especially seeing the video that they did edited, that's really what it reminded me of.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It really was. And we're looking forward to continue to watch your success, not only in Brooklyn, but we know when it's time for you to even move up and on. So Kevin Parada, former first round pick, top prospect for the Mets. Thanks for joining us, man. Great talking to you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
All right, great stuff from Kevin Parada. And a reminder that if you head to Brooklyn to see him, Blade Tidwell, Tyler Stuart, and other Mets prospects this weekend in Coney Island, the Cyclones host the Hudson Valley Renegades, an affiliate of the New York Yankees. Tomorrow, the first 1,500 fans get a Jeff McNeil batting champ bobblehead, and there's a Fry-Yay drink special game ticket promotion. 2 24-ounce beers or seltzer for just $20. Saturday is DC Comics Night. The first 1,500 fans get a Joker bobblehead giveaway. And Sunday is Nickelodeon Paw Patrol Day with a character appearance. Free Dippin' Dots for the first 500 kids. A Big League Sunglasses giveaway for the first 1,000 fans. Plus a pregame catch on the field. And postgame kids run the bases. For tickets and full details, visit BrooklynCyclones.com. A lot of fun stuff going on in Brooklyn, Joe. Like I said, the last Cyclones game I went to was baseball. You could drink. It was Star Wars night on the same night. It was almost like walking through a carnival, but everything's being thrown at you instead, and baseball is going on. It's a blast out there in Brooklyn. But on a serious note here, Joe, as we close out today's show, and the Mets continue to frustrate us, but we are here every week to talk about it, except me being on vacation last week, of course. Closing thoughts here, Joe.
Let's just hope they could start to string something together.
Joe's closing thoughts is, let's just hope. We are in dire times. He usually has a theory, an answer, a solution. Let's just hope.
It's a shrug emoji. Let's hope that they could do what they did to Philly last time, and then obviously we'll see what next week brings. And thanks again to Kevin Parada for joining us. So obviously you know me, prospect stuff, and draft is right around the corner and something I'm always into. So always cool to catch up with some Mets prospects, especially shortly after they're drafted.
Yeah, especially someone like Parada, who, I mean, how much do you and I talk about him, and you wrote about him, Joe, before the draft? This is a guy who would be amazing if he's there. Probably not. It happens. Sometimes things work out here in Mets land. Besides let's just hope from Joe. It's like, look how they massacred my boy. What happened here? A few notes from us. We'll get back to the scoreboard in a few weeks. A quick recap from the last one before I went on vacation. Since it's old/boring news already, we each scored 1 point, and the current score is Joe 10. I have 11. Next week, we are recording a special episode of the Mets Pod at the Cadillac Club in Citi Field on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. before the game. So if you have tickets for the club that night, be sure to be there early to check us out and get a chance to ask a live mailbag question. Of course, that show will be recorded and posted as a normal episode on all platforms, especially YouTube if you want. I think it'll look pretty cool. Listen, I like my brick set. I like Joe's background as well. I'm a little excited to actually have the Cadillac Club be our set for a show, so you can watch it on YouTube later that evening. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Elevate your style in a Cadillac. Go from bold to bolder in an SUV, from inspiring to awe-inspiring in a sedan. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. And remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your shows. Thanks so much, everybody. Catch you next week from Cadillac.